Hello. Today on Mental Health Discovery and Recovery, I have a lovely guest. He has been a therapist. He's a psychologist, has a master's in psychology for over 42 years, and has written this great book. I love it. I'm no stranger to anxiety. And that's why I think sometimes I work well with people with anxiety because I know what it feels like and I know what to do to fix it. And Faust does too. So Faust Ruggiero is going to talk to us today about fixing your anxiety. Welcome, Faust. Glad you could come be with us today.
Mary, thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, I read your book as we talked about earlier, because I think everybody knows we all talk earlier when it just pop up on a screen somewhere. But Faust has this great new book, the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook. And I'll tell you, it's handy because there's a chapter that fascinates me. So he's agreed to talk about it with me. And it's chapter 16. We're just going to give you a little preview. It's called People, Places, and Things. Now you might think, what does that have to do with anxiety? But there's a subtitle of that chapter called Positive Energy, Growth, and Life Redefined. So could you tell us a little bit about this people, places, and things and how that fits in to um, resolution of anxiety and why it's so practical and why I might be so fascinated with it.
Mary, when we talk about anxiety, there's a physical component, which is huge, but we also we bring energy into our lives, and people, places, and things. They just don't come into our lives and they're in and they're out, and that's the end of it. They bring some type of energy, and that energy, we nurture it one way or another. If it's negative energy, we move with that. So I see this all the time, particularly look in the country now. Everyone's attacking and everyone is
Mm.
criticizing, and you're giving off negative energy, you're taking in negative energy, then you're giving it off again. It's this circle that just keeps on going. And I just tell people, get away from the negative people. If they make you feel anxious, it's a red flag. If you're asking yourself questions about what they think about you, or how you're feeling around them, if you're getting anxious before you're around them, if you're feeling that negative stuff, they're critical. Get away from that, because that's going to, I always call it the anxiety demon. It feeds
Yes.
on that. It looks for food to feed on, and if we keep on bringing that food into our lives, it feeds on, it gets stronger, we get weaker.
So true. And so we're going to take this in three parts today: the people, places, and things, and the personal growth from it. I've always said if somebody makes you feel badly about yourself, doesn't mean they're toxic people, they're just not good for you. If somebody makes you feel good about yourself, they're good for you. Is that kind of what you're saying? And can you run with that concept a little bit?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. And the first part, obviously, if they don't make you feel good about yourself, why be there? But I always want people to be strong on the inside. I talk about with my people, it really doesn't matter whether they tell you you're wonderful or they tell you that you're horrible. You have to have your own opinion. That's where we're going with this. Positive people obviously help you in that regard as you're on the journey to getting to the point where you're strong enough. If these people are so negative, I mean, if they're dealing with things in their lives and they're not working on those things,
Hmm.
you're going to bring their concerns into your world, and even if you don't want them, they're going to give them to you. I will guarantee you
If
that.
you take them, they will.
If
Could you give an
you're willing.
example? Could you give an example of that, of how that could happen to someone?
Oh, absolutely. Take any issue in the world, whether it's politics or religion or gender or what, and people start talking about it. And then they're expecting us to agree with them. That's the huge expectation that I've seen, maybe in the past 3 or 4 years. It was always there,
Yes.
always had that undercurrent. Now it's blatant. You do it my way, or I don't want to be around you. So the pressure to do that, with these kind of negative people, puts you in a position to either stand your ground or you start doing something that's really horrible. You people please. And
The
then you
worst.
say, okay, I want you to like me, so I'll go along with that. You start by placating them, but then you realize that the brain learns by repetition over time. This stuff keeps bombarding your brain, and now you don't realize it, but subtly it's changing the way you think, and you're doing things the way these other people want you to do things.
Yes, you
And
forfeited yourself, which is, I've written about codependency, which
mhm,
is a monster unto itself. And you just described it. You give up yourself.
you
And
do.
people pleasing is the major, major symptom of that. It's like totally agree with someone when you don't. Like, I love vanilla ice cream too, when you might like chocolate better. I'm using a benign example so I won't
Right,
hurt anyone or cause
right.
any letters to come. But yes, and in the old days, there used to be sacred conversations. People didn't talk about these things. I sometimes social media can be anti-social media, but
It is often, yes.
and you brought up something. So in this processes to employ, this is from his chapter. Is it okay if I share that with them? So
Absolutely.
not a spoiler alert.
Mhm.
Okay. I love this because Faust puts in here um not only what you're going to read about, but how it's going to be applied. And I love that because he says processes to employ brutal honesty, I over E, be present and understand, and slowing down life's pace and your internal focus. Now, we talked about removing positive people, but can you talk about those first four things, the brutal honesty and especially the slowing down, being present, being brutal, and what does that mean? And slowing down life's processes.
Mary, when you're going to do this, if you really want to work on yourself and you want to feel good about yourself, the first thing you have to do is slow down. The brain is not designed to get to be bombarded with all this information on a very quick pace. And
Right.
I sometimes when I've done workshops, I said, okay, everybody walk around the room real fast, and I'm going to talk to you. And then when I'm done, tell me what you heard. Well, of course, they didn't get 70, 80% of it.
I
Now I said,
love it.
sit down, I'm going to tell you something else. And they got most of it. The
Mhm.
brain needs to slow down so it can think. The other thing that happens is that when we go fast, you know, it tends to attach to the primal parts of us. We get
Ah,
excited. And when we do that, the emotions rise. And when that happens, now we're doing everything emotionally. There's that people pleasing. Oh my God, they won't like me. We're going so fast, we're not thinking about it. We're not being honest with ourselves. We're not even getting to the point that we have a chance to think in honest terms because we are so interested in making sure we're okay in that situation. So when I say slow down, nothing has to happen fast, particularly in a friendship. That should develop slowly anyway.
yes. Yes.
And whether it's just a friend or it could be a romantic situation or what, you still want it to go slow. Take your time, and you will actually feel better because you will connect with so many different parts of that other person. But we go fast.
And there
We
will be
when
conflict, and you can't just
and
cut
there
them off when there's conflict.
and yeah,
That's the
with the
brutal
conflict
honesty.
will
Like, no, you
you'll
don't look good in that dress. No, you don't look good in that coat and tie. Yeah.
and you'll be able to define that. What is it? Where is it coming from? Let me think about that a little bit. And we have to stop giving ourselves away, and we do that when we go fast. Our emotions come into play, and that's that I over E thing I talk about. Intellect over emotion is what I'm talking about. If you go
Uh-huh.
slow, you give your brain enough time to say, wait, what's going on here? Let me think about this. Let me make some decisions about what I want to do. But when we go real fast, the emotions take over, and the emotions are quick fixers. I see it. I want to give it to me now. Okay, I feel good. And when we keep, and again, we've trained ourselves to think in that fashion.
Yes.
So we see it and we want to feel good right away. We meet someone and we want them to like us now. And you meet them, it's an introduction. That's all it is. And then you let it develop and it goes where it's going to go. And if it doesn't go in a direction you want it to go, and it probably wasn't going to anyway, you just took the
Yes.
shortcut to get there.
So thank you. So I want everybody listening, that's intellect over emotion. So use your brains and also pay attention to how you feel about yourself. That's what you're saying. You're not like, I want that person to like me, just saying, I want to like me around that person.
Correct.
Totally different concept. So thank you for sharing that because people need to really grasp it. That's why I love this chapter. There's so much in it. And then you talk about internal focus. And that's we call internal locus of control. We studied psychology. Explain that to somebody. I call it like the inner critic can start screaming at you, but the inner critic might also be just a very negative whisper that people are conditioned. Like you said, repetition over and over and over is how you condition someone. And by repetition, you don't condition, which is why fast things don't work, as we discussed. You know, we're in an instant gratification society, and you didn't get conditioned overnight. You're not going to get reconditioned. So discuss that with the incremental goal setting, forward movement, all of the things you discuss in your book.
Yeah, those are all the, just to go back to the beginning, when I wrote the book, I talk about processes. I believe in anything you do, there's a process involved. You and I are doing an interview. You prepared, you had this whole process, all these processes you go through to get ready. So did I. Now, that's in everything that we do. Those are kind of the smaller processes. The bigger processes are I want to think about how, I'm going to feel here. I want to reflect on what's going on. I want to take a step back. That ability to kind of go with a natural flow rather than trying to go against the wind all the time. All those kinds of things, they're all processes. And
Yes.
they evolve because we think about them. Somewhere along the line, we've developed this autopilot way of doing things. I want to just let my brain take it. I don't want to engage. I don't want to think too much.
Right.
And I don't think consciously about the moment I'm in and say, what's going on here? I do this often. Okay, what did I just hear? What's this person do? Why did they say that? Not only to me, just to this, why are they talking about that other person? Those type. I ask myself the whys. Why is that going on? Do I want to be part of this? Because if I'm going to
Aha.
get part of that toxic
Right.
person, I know that what's going to go into place. There's going to be, self-deprecation. There's going to be envy. There's going to be people pleasing. There's going to be all these maintenance things I have to do to maintain this relationship. As soon as I start, the moment I start, I'm lost. I've moved off my
Yes.
own square, so to speak. The processes keep me there. Slow down, be brutally honest with myself. That's the toughest one.
Ah, brutally honest with yourself too. Very
Yes, yes.
important.
Get
Oh, it
out to
is.
someone
I'm
else
brutal
who's
with myself. I would never
well,
talk to my clients like I talk to myself.
oh yeah, how about that? And I always say, if you can't be honest with you, you're not being honest with anyone else. I
Right.
mean, and
And in
once,
fairness to my clients, they would not, and to yours too, you wouldn't, because it's what we say to ourselves. And when we want to make a change, the higher up the level you go, I just want to clarify that for my clients and anybody else who's listening, the higher level up you go, and I want you to comment on this. You have to be disciplined, and discipline means you're brutally honest with yourself. Like, okay, these pants don't fit. It's not the dry cleaner's fault. It's my fault. Okay, girl, you can not eat this for at least a month. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
those kinds of things. And,
Yeah.
in a situation where maybe I'm disagreeing, or maybe I feel like that person's at fault, maybe I'm going to take a step back and say, I didn't do that so well. I have a tendency to do this. I know that. And I have to get real honest with me. But,
Yes.
that's where the strength is, because, if you're not honest, that triggers all the defenses that go along with it. Now you're going to deny,
Yes.
and you're going to rationalize and intellectualize, make things look like they fit where they don't fit. But when you do this, all of a sudden you become free.
Ah,
You're no longer stuck in the, I have to use all these things in order to survive and make myself look good. You're in a, what, I can accept that, because once I said this is the way it was, I can change it.
yes, you can change
I
it if
can
you're brutally honest with yourself.
Yeah, you can't change it until you do. So
Yeah.
if you're not that way, now the other thing is, if you're not honest with, if I know you're not honest and I want to manipulate you a bit, I can do that, and you'll move back and forth where I go, because you didn't stop and say, what's going on here? How am I feeling? What's really happening? Am I doing anything that is causing me to not feel so good, or go where I don't want to go? I know you're not going to do that. You'll deny and rationalize. I can move you
Right.
everywhere I want to move you.
Oh,
And
wow. And I hope somebody recognizes that in themselves. So I'm going to put those two things together. The way you do that is the first thing, go back to square one, is slow down.
mm,
Don't get off your own square. I love those words you use. It's like, don't try to be something you're not. And that it's amazing, because if you don't pay attention to how you feel about yourself, you're likely to people please. There's even a movie, I wish someone, so I'm just going to throw it out there to a great writer. There's a movie, it's from another country than the United States, and it's about a writer who's not very good. So he manipulates everybody in the town to do what he wants them to do so he can write a great novel. Okay, seriously, watch out for this, people. Watch out. Watch out for people pleasing. It's very, very dangerous and people can be manipulated. And if you're not brutally honest with yourself, like if you know you gossip too much, you can change it. If you know you do this, you can change it. So I love this. So you also mentioned about places because we're going to put all these things together. We're kind of make them cohesive and very organic here. Because people and places have a lot to do with each other, different cultures, different things. Talk about how places can relieve anxiety, because I always say travel is good for the soul.
Interesting question. Through my career, I got involved with counseling addicts, so I went and got certified with addiction. And of course, if you get into addiction, you get into all those places. 12 steps always tells you that. I'm not recovering myself, but that's what we see there. And then you get into the codependency. Now you put all of that together in those places. You put this, okay, this is probably not a good place for me. They gossip here. They're angry. They tend to do some things. Maybe they drink too much. Maybe they're just not nice people. And I go there. Now I have to somehow adjust to that in that place. And I keep on putting myself in that place where things are happening that aren't good, where other people are that I don't want to be around. I start changing to accommodate. The brain always tries to accommodate what we do. It's that old thing we call habit formation.
Seeks the familiar.
It normalizes things. And once it normalizes things, we stop questioning. Then we go there with a misguided idea that we got this. Oh yeah, that doesn't bother me. I don't really like that person much until they come over and talk to me. Then I'm
I've done my 30 days in rehab, so I can go to a bar. I'll be all right. I can order club soda.
Yeah. Exactly. So we keep going to these places where all the toxins are. And I used to give a demonstration when I went to the schools and I would work with kids, and I'd said, here's a clear vase of water. And now if I drop one drop of black ink into it, look at what happens. I said, it starts to get black. And if I keep on going, you can't see anything anymore. That's what happens when we let toxins come in our lives.
Yes.
If we're going, and we do this all the time. This is routine. It's something that people hear, they say, oh my God, I shouldn't do that. You have to be able to identify it and get a little tough on yourself, because we do this all the time. I'm not going to do that. So maybe I'll do a little bit of that. It's almost like going on the diet. I can't have the cookie, but I'll have one today. Well, as soon as you give yourself permission, the mind's way of doing things is to expand. That's a natural neurological component as far as the brain works. You're going to continue to do that. And we develop that, and we keep going into these places over and over again. Whatever is in those places, we will normalize and we will begin doing.
So comfortable is not necessarily reliable, is it?
You know what I look at?
Intellect over emotion.
When I look at all things comfortable as things that need to be reassessed over and over again, because if we lived in a static world, one that didn't change much, that'd be great. But the world's dynamic; it keeps on changing. And if I decide that's going to be comfortable for me, it's going to change around me. I'm going to eventually create comfort where comfort doesn't exist, and I'm not going to have a comfort zone anymore.
Exactly.
So when I see it as too comfort, I question a little. I don't, not to other people, but in my mind, I'm saying, okay, how's this feeling? Maybe sometimes I'll just change it up just to do it. Nothing major, just to spark a change. Just to see, or just to spark the change, so that environment looks a little different. And how do I feel in there now? I want to keep it new. I want to keep it fresh.
Yes, you mentioned something about I'm not in recovery either, but I did an internship in drug and alcohol recovery, and you may have as well. And there's a lot of neuroscience to that, and I'm not picking on anyone in that industry, but I learned in there that geographical cures don't work. That may be true for addiction, but I'm not so sure about anxiety, because we have fight, flight, and frozen responses neuroscientifically, and traveling satisfies that flight response. And if you don't think traveling is good for you, look at the travel industry. It makes a fortune. What's the first thing people did when COVID became manageable? They got on planes and boats and cars. Yeah. So discuss geographical cures in terms of anxiety and not necessarily recovery, because that you have said, you've talked about safe places and what safe places are, but expand on that a little bit, because I want people to understand that going places and doing things with the great people, bringing back the people into it, why it's so good for anxiety.
It can be that two thoughts on that. I have people I counsel, some of them will respond to that. They're people that have the safe places, and I don't want to do this. And, if there's going to be a party, someone's having a party, they're in their heads for 3 hours, 4 hours before, and they're thinking
Yeah.
of all the horrible things that can happen. And they're beginning to make up excuses not to go, or hoping
Mhm.
maybe, gee, it's an outside party. Maybe it'll pour and it'll be canceled, all those kinds of things. So we want them to take some steps. To go
Okay.
out and do that. And then we have the people who have anxiety and don't want to face it, and they run, and let me keep on putting things in. So it's always that combination where you sit down and say, okay, let's look at what's going to work for you in this situation. I have for example, a person who I counsel who, when things get a little tough, she takes off, get on the
Mhm.
plane and go. Unfortunately, her lifestyle, her wealth allows that to occur. Other people don't have that, and so they can't. But they're the type that go out to eat 4 times a week, and
Mhm.
this movie and that concert and this place, and they don't cook, and they order out everything they do. And I say, okay, well, it's a little excessive. Let's back it down and let's just
Slow
get to,
down.
yeah. What I'm saying is, if you're taking travel and it addresses the causes, helps
Mhm.
the cause of it,
Yes,
great. If we're medicating the symptoms, then it's an
exactly.
escape for a while, and it'll just be a quick fix that's always needed. And I'm always a go to the cause guy. I want to go find, okay,
Aha.
you're doing this.
Go to
I
the
want to
cause.
find
So
out
if you know the
why.
cause is grief,
Yes.
if someone's in grief and they have had a terrible grief and they've just stayed at home and kept themselves locked up, then travel would be a good idea. But if they're just living with somebody they don't like, that they should have divorced 20 years ago to get away, that then you would deal with that cause. So I love how you customize and individualize that fight, flight, and frozen mechanism. Because some people just have agoraphobia, and just getting them to go to,
Uh-huh.
seriously, I mean, I've had this happen, just to go to the mailbox, just to call one friend. Seriously, it is unbelievable what PTSD and social anxiety can do to lock a person down into frozen or in collapse mode. So discuss how you would deal with someone who was in frozen mode.
I have a chapter in this book. And what I'm talking about is when people are frozen, when they're in the house, when they can't make those moves, every move looks like it's a big world out there, and they're stepping into this undefined, huge territory that they have no idea what to do with. I call it breaking it into little rooms rather than
Incremental,
stepping.
like we talked about. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the symbolism I use is, if you bought a big factory, or you built a factory, and you went in, and there were no rooms in it at all. They haven't gotten to the inside of the building, and I say, here, go set up all the people, the 200 people you're going to put in here and work. It would be chaos. It's too big. There's no definition. You wouldn't know what to do. So what do we do in that factory? We set up little rooms. And we say, okay, maybe the copy room's here, and here's the lunchroom, and here's where you go to have a conference. Here's where your sales desk, whatever it may be. When you're going to step out of the house, I'm telling people, little at a time. First, make the decision. Have your network, if you have one, to help you to support you. Then maybe you're not going to the mailbox. You're only going to stand in the doorway of your front door and just be there. Just look outside. Then I might say, go sit on the front porch a little bit the
Yeah.
next day, and just get used to that. Maybe take a walk around your property or your apartment building or whatever it may be. Break it down to the point where maybe 4 or 5 or 6 days later, you say, well, let me see if I can go to the mailbox. And the thing is, I say, don't overdo it,
Exactly.
because you can turn back anytime you want to.
Yes.
Take your time, go as far as you can. I just had a person who couldn't go out of the house and had to go to a wedding. It was someone very close. What am I supposed to do? My God, I'll have an anxiety attack in the church. And we got her to the point that she can get to the church. I said, now sit in the back and watch. And if you get anxiety, just very, very calmly walk out the back door.
Walk out the back
No,
door.
know that you can.
Yes.
You're not stuck. You're not a prisoner there. We build all the safeguards in, and people respond. I have yet to see anyone that I've worked with who hasn't been able to make these moves. But we break
In the
them down into
increments.
small moves, little rooms where it's not, you didn't walk into the huge arena and it's empty and
Right. That would be implosion, just
you
like,
hear it echo and it's all coming at you. It's not that. We broke it down into very simple things to do, and they respond very well.
that's beautiful, because there's a term in psychology, I know you studied it, called systematic
I
desensitization.
use it often.
And that's what that is increments. Yeah.
I reference it in the book. What we're talking about is, it's the way I use it is something starts to make you anxious. What you're going to want to do is something, it's the old calm place thing. You can think of something very calm to allow your anxiety to go right down. It's working against the anxiety systematically. And they do all the body, the muscle tensing and releasing, and there's all different things. And so in the book, I reference that, and I tell people, go look for this online. If you
Yes.
can use this along with your breathing, which is essential, and maybe your meditation or yoga or prayer, whatever you use, and you
Oh,
can put this
yes.
into the picture, just an end result kind of a comment is I started using this in grad school. We started really getting into this, like a course in something like this, and I've used it ever since. And nothing, very, very rarely do I ever respond and go like that, because as soon as it happens, my body's trained to go down.
Yes.
It goes down and says, okay, what was that, and what do we need to do with it?
Yes, the neuroscience, that the fight, flight, frozen, that the autonomic nervous system, and there's a parasympathetic nervous system that I'll ask you to discuss, that vagus nerve that kicks off. And it's just, I always say the same thing that takes your breath away at the Grand Canyon is the same thing that takes your breath away when you have a panic attack, but one's a positive emotion, one's a negative emotion. So could you talk about that in the term of people, places, and things?
Yeah, when you get to the point that you are no longer overreacting to some situation, and the overreacting isn't always fight and flight. Sometimes the overreacting is how wonderful that is. And in that first
Yes.
3 seconds, you're going to do whatever you just
That's what a
reacted.
people pleaser does
That's
sometimes.
what all of us do. But that's what they'll do quickly in those situations. And if you can give your brain enough time to say, let me take this whole thing in. Like, you're going to the Grand Canyon, you can go, oh my God, and then you're stuck. And then you look, versus let me just relax and take this in. Wow, I don't have to put any words to it. I don't have to say anything. I'm just going to
Yes.
look at this. You're giving your mind a chance to take it all in, then formulate your reaction. And then you're going to get an accurate response to what you're
Ah,
doing. That's the key. When it's emotion, your emotion is typically not accurate. It is a burst, the burst of energy.
I love
So
that.
it gets in the way of the brain.
Mhm.
What it does, excitement does that. So I like to be able to say, I'm going to get the same thrill, but I'm not going to get the high you just got. When it's done, and we sat down a week later when we came home, we talked about the canyon and the whole thing. We're going to get the same things. I'm going to have all the same thrills you have, but I'll guarantee you, I will report more than you will. I will connect things a little better than you will, because my brain had the option to do that. It was told, I gave it an okay. Hey, you come up first. You look at all this, then we'll react. And what we react to is really now much more realistic and positive, and puts me in a position to make some
Oh, wow.
good choices.
I love that, because it really does people. It's not about reaction. It's about taking it all in. I hope
Yes.
somebody took that in, that just pause and take it in. Again, it's back to slowing down, intellect over emotions. Emotions are wonderful, but they can also be horrible. So, to be more realistic and use your intellect. That is absolutely beautiful. I used to be scared of heights, and a long time ago, my father was a psychiatrist, and he took me. It was a long, long time ago, before the Eiffel Tower was all fixed up. We were on a psychiatric convention. And so he takes me to the top of the Eiffel Tower and tells me to look down until I'm not afraid. That was implosion. That
The
was just
old
wrong.
impulse. I was going to say it's the old
That
implosive
was just
way of
wrong.
doing
And
it.
I remember looking at him, and I was so furious. This is why I tell people, don't implode yourself. I'm going to back this up with, I've never told this story, I don't think, ever before. And it's short, but I looked at my father, and I was 17, so I said a couple of cuss words. They weren't too bad. And he said, "Are you mad at me or are you scared?" I said, "I'm mad at you." And he said, "But you're not scared." I went, "No, but I'm glad I don't have a weak heart because I would, I would have a heart attack." I said, "This is mean." And that was back in the 60s and 70s. What, that's what they did back then. They did that quick fix stuff. We now know that doesn't necessarily work. And
No,
everybody's
that's
looking
kind
for,
of like,
oh,
hey,
it's
dad, thanks,
horrible.
thanks. I can look down, but I have PTSD now.
Yes, thanks so much. I know, and it was swaying and it was cold and windy and icy because the conventions are always at off season. I'm like, oh my goodness. So don't, please, everybody listen to Faust here. He's telling you to slow down, systematically desensitize yourself. Anxiety by splitting it up into little things. This is how you do it. Like walk out of the room, then walk out of the house and sit on your front porch. That's beautiful. Not many people adhere to this anymore. The quick fix stuff is what's out there. That's why I wanted to interview you, because your stuff really resonates with me, because you just cannot go out, and you should face your fears, but you can't run through them. You need to run toward them, but not through them. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. They're there for a reason. The fear developed for some reason, whether it's rational
The
or not.
cause.
But the more if you're running right through it, what's going to happen is you're going to miss information. Okay,
Mhm.
so you get to the other side, just like you said. I look down, great, but now I'm dreaming about looking down, or other things develop. If you go slow, systematically through it, you catch all these little subtle things, these undercurrents that you never thought were there, and you realize, wow, that's actually contributing to what I was doing.
Yes.
And I never even thought about that. You know how it is. People come into therapy and they say, okay, I have this. And by the time, I'm in 3 or 4 sessions into it, I've uncovered about 10 more things that are contributing. And they're not horrible, but there are others. Nothing happens one at a time. I've
No,
never seen that. No one comes into the office and it's one thing.
it's cumulative.
I
Yes.
like the people that come and say, I don't know where to begin. I said, good, that's great. That's great. I said, yeah, because there's a lot of things there. I'll know where to begin. You just start, and I'll
Yes.
know where to direct the conversation. And that's what I'm telling people. Slow. The brain takes time to assimilate all the things we're doing, to take all this stuff in and then make it part of what we're doing. I always give the example of um, the little league shortstop, the infielder. The batter hits the ball, it goes to him. He doesn't put his glove down far enough, and the coach keeps saying, "Get your glove down." Well, it may take months, and finally the kid gets it, and the glove goes down, because learning is a function of repetition over time. That's
Yes.
the way we learn. It's not implosive. Implosive. When your father did that, it got the brain and went, okay, because you
Exactly.
know what? You weren't looking at that anymore. Your brain was thinking about the explosion that just went on, but that doesn't connect to anything. And you can look down. That didn't say that your fear of heights went away. It says in that situation, you were able to do something you never did before.
Right. Oh, yeah. I still don't like bridges much, but I systematically desensitize myself and drive over the ones I can when I can. Yeah. So, the
Exactly.
cause. Yes. Well, thank you. You'll send me a bill. Send me a bill, Foster. Yes. I mean, he was a psychiatrist, so it wasn't like it wasn't like he didn't know. But back then, they really didn't know. And I see kind of a resurgence in that. And yes, people ask me about hypnotherapy a lot. I said it has its benefits, but again, it sometimes, yes, people can have an epiphany in a moment and get that quick fix there. That does happen occasionally, but most of the time it is conditioning. And you mentioned meditation, and I am a hardcore meditator. So in fairness to my father, he taught me how to do that in my 20s. So he did good things too. And meditation is kind of the mediator between the conscious and subconscious. So explain why that, because I say it's traveling without buying a plane ticket. It
Yep,
really is.
it is. And I'm the same, do the same.
Oh,
I
good.
learned that
So
many,
you'll,
many years ago,
yay.
right pre-college. Someone came through at that time. It was transcendental meditation that
Yes,
was coming.
TM. Yeah, that's a,
So it came through, and we all started doing it. But as I brought it into my practice and worked with people, I never got them to start meditating, and I still don't right away. I started with breathing. I said, okay,
yes.
fine, let's start doing something. Let's start getting your breathing where we need it. And there's various techniques, and we'll get on one of them that works for them. I'll say, now you're getting that down. What I like about it is I'm going to ask you to think about every breath you're taking as you're doing the breathing. They say, well, I got it now. Just think about it, because I'm going to move you into a higher order thing here.
Mhm.
So now they're thinking about it. And what did I do? I helped them to get into the present, to stay in the moment.
Yes.
And that means their body and their mind were in the moment. Now we say, now I start them on the next step, which is systematic desensitization. Now sit down for 10 minutes, and start with your toes and tighten them and let them go. And for anyone listening, the reason we do all this tightening and letting go is that when the body lets go, it lets go farther than it was before.
It does. That's a technique. We're going to slow the conversation down and do that. If there is a quick fix, if you're having a bad moment, is if you tighten your body up, take a big deep breath, and then exhale and release it, it'll release faster. So continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted somebody to get that. That is, if you're having a panic attack, it's amazing. Just like a riptide, just tense up, relax through it, and it'll spit you out back on shore.
Right.
Yeah.
And once I get them to learn that part, I said, and the reason I do that with anxiety people is because when I try to get it, trial and error years and years ago, when I said, let's try to get you to meditate, they couldn't sit longer than 3 or 4 minutes. Because if they're anxious and you sit and you're just trying to focus, you get more anxious. So we started with the breathing. We went into the systematic D, and we took everybody through that to the point where they were able to just calm. Then we go into the meditation.
If people don't want to discuss meditation, if they don't like it, and I can hear I'm making it up. I'm not hearing voices, but I can hear the voices out there that go, oh no, another meditation person. You can do 3 and 5 minute meditations. I do them all the time. You can. You really, really can. I mean, even they have learned it, we've just lost Tina Turner. What a person she was. And she chanted, she chanted, and she left an abusive marriage by repetitiously chanting and humming. And she said, I love a quote that she said. She goes, I was chanting and humming from a system I learned from a friend from a different faith of mine. I kept the Lord's Prayer near me, but I put them both together, and I developed my own system of thinking. So meditation helped her leave an abusive, horrible situation. And it also helped her not be afraid anymore, so she could go out and be Tina Turner, which she said she wasn't really like her. The stage persona was very different than the real one, who sought peace. And I love it that she lived in Switzerland, which is a neutral place. And she had that song, I Don't Want to Fight No More. She probably had some trauma from that marriage. So she would be a good, like a case study that neither one of us have seen, but you can override your anxiety just with what Faust was saying here with meditation. Yoga helps, systematic desensitization. These are all practical tools. What are some other practical tools that people can use, like hardcore practical, like the tensing up and releasing?
To go back, the first thing before we even get into that, I like to say to people is try all these things. You're saying no, another meditation person. And then I'll say, did you give it a good go? Because if you think in a week you were going to meditate, and so I'm answering your question by saying you've got to give something a go for a period of time. I'm back to the brain has to
slow down.
Right. You said it before. We didn't develop these things overnight. They're not leaving in a week or a month. If you want the benefits of meditation, at least to understand them so you can see where it's going, a month would be great if you get it done that fast. 2 months, really, you're going to say, you know what? I'm different. People are going to say you're different.
Then you begin to crave it.
And it's opening the mind to these things. I get that way when we get into issues of faith, which I have in the first book. And I say, as soon as they hear the G word, they say, oh, no, not me. And I say, well, try it on for size. I would rather hear you say, I don't like doing that. I really gave it a go, and it wasn't for me, then good. But you may have a solution, whether it's meditation or faith or anything else we're talking about. You may have it at your fingertips. And you said, no, I don't think I want to do that. And you know what? Most people do that because we don't like to be told what to do.
Exactly. We have
we come
reactance
for help, and
formation.
then when we say do this, they say no.
No, we have reactance. I want to discuss that just a second. Reactance is what you have when you go, I don't want anyone to tell me what to do. It's there to keep us autonomous so we don't follow despots and rulers.
Right.
So you don't become a people-pleasing codependent. Now, now that said, reactance can work against you too if you just are rebellious for something that's good for you. Just pay attention to that. And like in faith, when I have someone push back a bit, because I never ever mess with anyone's faith. And some people say, well, I'm an atheist. I say, yes, but you have a moral compass. So there's your spiritual nature there. You have a moral compass that you follow. It came from somewhere, like you talked about earlier, from cause. So this body, mind, spirit connection is a trinity that's very, very important for anxiety, isn't it? Can you address that?
It is. The more aspects of our humanity that we are willing to address, the more complete we become, whether we want to admit it or not. We are physical, we are emotional, we're intellectual, and we are spiritual. Whether you want to accept that idea or not, it doesn't go away, no matter how we do. And if you want to say, higher order stuff, God, well, or like you said, maybe it's inside me, maybe it's my essence. All I ask people to do is define it.
Attach
Please
it,
don't say
attach
there's
to it.
something out there. I know it's there. I don't know what it is. That's nothing. That's a cop out. Be willing to define any part of yourself.
And describe how that would, it goes back to your places. Describe how that would be a safe place for someone, even if they're not in a safe place at the moment. It's a question that just popped in my head.
To define themselves.
Yeah, and their spiritual nature, that if they're not in a safe place and they attach to that, they recognize their body's hurting, their mind is racing, and how could that attaching to their spiritual belief that could help them with their anxiety in the moment? Because we are all stuck in situations we don't like.
We're back to that little incremental thing we're talked about. In the first book I wrote, the Fix Yourself Handbook, I have a chapter on faith. And what I'm saying is that there are really two kinds of faith. There's concrete faith and there's abstract faith. The concrete faith is what we have. We get up every day. I turn the light switch on. It's going to go on. We whether it is or whether the bulb burns out or whatever.
It's faith and electricity.
Right. It is a concrete faith based upon what I can see, touch, what my senses can deal with. Yes. I know I can go there. It's not the fact that it's concrete. My brain, and my thoughts, which are not concrete, did that. They said, yes, I have faith in that. If they had that, there's the possibility they can evolve to the next level. Now, as a human being, do you want it to, there's your ceiling. Do you want it to stop right there and you don't want to explore? Or do you want to go and see what's in the next room? So I start them with that concrete faith. So they're not making this giant leap from I have nothing.
Beautiful.
You made me go over here and say, I got a soul and I'm going to heaven or purgatory or whatever.
Right.
I didn't
some
ask you to
people
do
have been so damaged by
Yeah.
spirituality. I don't care which branch of it is. Some people have just been damaged by it. Be it, I won't name any faiths or any branches, but some people have been damaged by parents. Again, you can agree to disagree. We talked about you don't have to people please. You don't have to agree with somebody's belief system. In fact, that was truly one of the sacred conversations that people did not talk about politics, religion, things like that. They kept it to themselves. And I think our society has made us feel like exposure is normal. And in therapy, it's called exposure with response prevention, which is what systematic desensitization is. And when we don't have an ability for escape, we need to escape inside ourselves in the moment if we're in not a safe place. So traveling to safe places, feeling safe, but also a little outside your comfort zone. Comfort zones are kind of like recliners. If you stay in them too long, you atrophy.
Yes, you do. And the world spins around you and you're not in it. So and the problem with that comfort zone is while the world continues to spin, it's going past you and you lose part of it. So now making your advance to get back into the world really looks unfamiliar.
Yes.
It's changed.
Oh, thank you.
That
So
religion,
we're gonna
thing
go ahead. I'm sorry.
the spiritual thing, just one quick point. You're right. People were damaged by religion and way, but now we're being damaged on the other side where people are down talking spirituality, not even religion,
No, I'm just
spirituality
just
so
in
much
general.
that now we're back to the people pleasing and all those things. People are afraid to say, yeah, I'm going to try that, or this is my faith, or
Mhm.
whatever it may be.
Yes.
They make it sound ambiguous. And then of course you keep hearing yourself say that, so you believe it.
Yes.
And now your connection with the inside of you, with that spiritual part of you, becomes ambiguous and
Yes.
really not functional.
And it's not something, this is so important for anxiety. And I want to share this and get your take on it. I always tell people, go back to sacred conversations. You know, when people try to, I was a songwriter in Nashville for years, and we had a saying there called shut up and sing. That's just what we said. And
Mhm.
politicians there and the musicians all kind of, we in those days, back in those days, we all just kind of, nobody really talked about it. They were supportive of us as songwriters, which was important, and on both sides. So we just shut up and sing. You don't have to share with other people. You don't have to get sucked into conversations. And I'll tell people all the time, I don't really discuss that. I don't want to cause any friction, and I appreciate your thoughts. And I just don't want to share an opinion. Can you tell people diplomatically how they can say that a different way too?
Start from the beginning. I started telling people that when we were talking about brutal honesty, and they're going in there and saying that we're going to find these horrible things. And I said, you may, and you're going to find beautiful things, but they're yours. You don't have to share them with the world. They're
No.
yours. Your spirituality is yours. You may choose to share it or you may not. When people bring that up, I just nod. I smile. And if they say, what do you think? And I say, well, you know what? I have my own thoughts about that. I really love keeping it personal, and
Beautiful. I love
and
keeping
I'm
it personal.
yeah, and I attach the positivity. I love keeping it personal. It's my relationship with, my Lord or whoever, however you want to say that, and that's where I go. And I'm really thrilled. Thanks a lot for asking me. I'm appreciating that you're interested in how I feel about that. But that's something that's very personal. And I like keeping it there. Everyone accepts it. I've
Yes,
never.
that's what movie stars do on talk shows when they say,
Yeah,
tell us about your personal life. They go, I don't discuss my personal life. What are your children like? I don't discuss my children. So
boundaries.
in my book about codependency, I said, you think like a movie star on a talk show. You don't have to share. Beware with whom you share. You just don't have to. Sometimes people ask me about my faith, especially you as a therapist. You have clients that want to know everything about you too. And I just go, it would take hours, and it's not helpful for you or therapeutic. I'm adapting and I'm adopting what you need, customizing that. I think that's why therapy, and before we go to the things section of this, I think that's why therapy is so different than a friendship, because professionally, we are holding space for somebody. We are setting aside any belief system we may have. And if we do have a strong belief system, such as I don't work with animal abusers, and I don't even mind saying that publicly. I have a very strong visceral reaction to that, to violence like that. Do not want to be around it. We actually, and thank goodness for our profession, we're allowed to refer out. We're allowed to say that's not something I can handle. So I think people need to realize that therapists are there to hold space with you, and there is rapport, but we're helping you listen to yourself. So run with that on how that works for anxiety when we, as professionals. I don't think people really say, I don't need a therapist, I just need a friend.
Yeah, uh, I get that. They like us to disclose a little bit. And I said, that's what you do with your friends, and that's good. I said, but you're not looking for that type of relationship here.
Mhm.
You're
That's
not
more like
looking
life coaching or mentoring. Yeah.
It really is. I said, if you want to do all that, you get yourself a life coach or
Life
whatever
coach
you
or a
want.
mentor. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
do life coaching, and yeah. So yeah, sometimes.
So I say, if you're looking to tear into what you need to tear into, let's stay focused on you. I'll know if I need to disclose something that would help you
A
to
benefit.
understand it. But other than that, let's kind of keep it there. And therapists often are concerned that they're going to react and say, well, geez, but they don't, because
No.
that's just one little piece. The rest of it is how we show our love for them as people. And
Yes.
I've always said, and I'm sure I can see that in you also. When they come into the office, I am thrilled to be with them.
Yeah.
I'm doing this all these years and I still love them and I still love being with them. And that's what they're going to feel. They're going to feel
They
that from me.
do. And I know people ask me that all the time. How can you care about everybody? And I said, I don't know. I don't know, but I genuinely do, because it would not be therapeutic if I did not. Everybody knows who Fred Rogers is, Mr. Rogers'
Right.
Neighborhood. There was a guy named Carl Rogers that I'm sure you studied.
Mhm.
And he had this concept of genuine positive regard. And I will tell you, if you have, and then speaking as if you're not a therapist, if you have genuine positive regard for everybody that you meet and yourself first, you will not have as much anxiety in your relationships at all. Will you, Faust? How does that work outside just being a therapist? Like, share what we do and why that's so important, even if you're not a therapist.
I'll tell you, I'll make it operational. When I meet someone, I will maintain eye contact. I will look at them. I will talk slowly and calmly. I will smile. And in my mind, what I'm thinking is, I really want to find out about this person, get to know the nice things about them. And so I'm already locked into a positive energy force, if you will. I hate to say it that way, but I'm locked into some good things. And then I'm going to be honest and say I'm going to see where it goes. And
Mhm.
if it's going in a direction where, just like any other relationship, gee, we crossed this one and that looked good. Now let's see about this one. And I approach them all that way. When people come into my office, I do the same thing. I assume that we're going to do wonderful things.
Yes.
Fortunately, I'm a real good diagnostician. So when they come in, I can pick things up right away.
Yes.
I'm,
Put the
you know,
pieces together. That's why you hire professionals too. We have decision trees, and that is where our training does come in handy.
that's right.
We're asking questions that we're putting decision trees together to rule out, like we're ruling out things too. We rule them out. So I think that will relieve some people's anxiety about therapy too.
We're talking about people. What I've said in the new book in that people category is, if you meet someone and you're having a conversation back and forth, and they're not just talking about themselves, or B, trying to talk you into something, you might have a friend. Okay. But the one that wants you to know all about them, well, there's
Mhm.
a lot of insecurities, and they're using you for something other than a friendship.
Yes.
Or if they're trying to coerce you into believing that you need to do it their way or think their way, that's not a good place to go either.
No narcissists.
Yeah. So I always just say, if it flows nice and easy and you walk away and say, that was nice. Your mind knows it right away. I didn't feel anything negative. That was
You
really
can just be
nice.
yourself.
Yeah,
Like this conversation. So
exactly.
genuine positive regard. So people just remember that. Google it. Like I said, go to Dr. Google and look at genuine positive regard, what that means. And is there anything else we need to talk about people? Because I want to move into the things
Let's
section of this
let's move into
chapter.
that. Let's go there.
I'm having some renovations done because it's post-COVID, and I just let the house go during all that. As you know, we were all scared, and I think we were all in survival mode. And I noticed, I said, I thought I was a decluttered person, but there are things, it's like I tell my clients, and this will be on a podcast, but I will probably put it on YouTube too. As I tell people, like, this pen, it's just a pen. It's just a pen, but the energy is in the memory. So the things have energy. Well, if this was a pen you used to sign your divorce papers, throw it away. If it's the pen you used to sign your birth certificate for your child, put it in a special place, right? So describe why things relieve anxiety, how your concept of things and how they can be create anxiety, and then what to do with the things to get rid of the anxiety.
Yeah. The key to things is not to overinvest. Emotions get into those things. Now we overinvest, or we use them to define ourselves, to create and define who we think we are. I have people that come in the office and they're working in a factory and they make $50,000 a year, and the person drives up into the office and I go, look, and he's got a new $60,000 truck out there, and I say, and I'll deal with that when he comes right. I'll say, you got a new truck? I said, yeah. I said, did you hit the lottery? No. I said, well, how are you paying? Well, I did all the math with the bank and they said I could do. I said, yeah, that's not what I asked. You've got a family, you got a house, a
Mm-hmm.
couple of kids. I said, when you're done at the end of the month, are you telling me that you have money left? No, we're pretty close, but the bank said I could. I said, you're using this to make yourself feel good. What would have happened if you would have went out and bought a used truck in good shape
Yes.
that had 1/3 the payments on it? It wouldn't have had all the bells and whistles. You wouldn't have drove into where you work or into your friends or wherever you go and had the big truck with all the bells and whistles, but you would have had a lot more money and less
Yes.
worry, less anxiety,
Yes.
less arguing in the house when the kids need this and there isn't any money because almost $800 a month went out for your truck and
So
your
true.
insurance before gas. By
Which
the time
makes
you're
people
done,
anxious. So
which
things make
makes
people
people
anxious when they have
anxious.
too much that they
Right.
can't, if they're living. I used to work for KISS of all things when I got out of college, when I was a theater major. And Gene Simmons of all people taught me this. He said, if you always live a little bit below your means, you'll never go broke. Because he had money
Exactly.
anxiety because he was born into poverty in Israel.
I
He would
remember.
not mind me saying that
Yes.
because he's very public about it. And like him or not, he was a good businessman. Can we all agree? And I remember him teaching me that in my 20s. So things can make people anxious. Too many things, not enough things. Poverty can also make people anxious. Talk about how that, like going the
Well,
other
that's
way.
that's the big thing. Money. You know,
Mhm.
money is a thing. It's not a person, not a place. It can do all those things for you, but money
But
is a thing. And it's
it's a
not,
tool.
yeah, it's not whether you have a lot of, it's how your mind functions with it. You can not have enough and be worrisome. You can have too much and it becomes the thing that you invest all your energy into. What if it should
Yes.
never define you? It,
No.
it it is there. It allows you to live and pay things and do what you have to do. That's all. The key to things is that they should never distract you from who you are,
Hmm.
you need to be. And they should not be quick fixes because they fix nothing.
Right.
You always have to come home to yourself and things. The truck is parked in the driveway or the garage that you
Yes.
built for the truck because it has to have a garage now or whatever. Those things should not be important. You should be able to say to yourself, if I don't have any of those things, could I be genuinely happy? If you really can answer that question, yes.
You're
Well, now when you
healthy.
put right, if you can put it all together, if I don't
Mhm.
have to be around those people or status or whatever it may be,
Mhm.
if I don't have to be seen in all those places because that's where I go, and I don't have to have all those things, and I can come home at the end of the day and I can be happy with me. I can
You're
look in the
just
mirror and say,
secure.
I have a nice life.
Yeah.
If and be happy with it and not
Yes.
ever need to do all that. Can I do that? If your answer is yes, you're really in a good place and you can build and your higher order processes are waiting for you. But if all
Ah.
these other things are in the way, you're going there, not to the development of the higher order things that where genuine love and happiness live.
Yes, and that's security. And security is the number one cure. I'm going to say that for anxiety. I will say cure. Security is kind of the opposite of anxiety, is feeling
Mm-hmm.
secure. And so, oh, thank you so much for this conversation. Because people do medicate with things. I know it's a fun statement to say retail therapy, but I read somewhere, and it's what keeps me from over shopping, that if, and I don't remember the exact amount, it's around $27. If you just throw away $27 a day on coffee or a knickknack or something like that, it adds up to $10,000 a year. Just do the math on that.
It's interesting
10,000.
because I do that with people, and that's the number we come to. Going out and eating and buying this and smoking and whatever it is that all the non-essentials,
Yes.
put them together, and then at the end of the year you look at someone who has done maybe something nice to their home and you say, gee, it must be nice. And I always stop and I say, really, let's go over what you spent on all your quick fix
Yes,
stuff
you could have done it.
versus,
Yeah.
yeah, you can put you can buy a hot tub and put it inside a new room for what you're spending
Yes.
on your entertainment. But then the hot
Yes.
tub's there and you go in every night and your spending is gone.
Yes, and the people need to add it up. Those $20 add up over the year. Really, 365 days of approximately $27 a day is all $10,000 a year. Over 10 years, that's $100,000 you could have invested that would have turned into $500,000 in like 10 to 20 years. So investing in yourself is important to relieve anxiety.
A huge question I ask people, and I often do at the end of an interview, I'll say to them, all these things that you're doing, people, places, things, ask yourself this: why am I doing it? And they look, and when I do that, they just look at me. I've never had anyone give me an intelligent answer or even a good answer
Wow.
with regard to that. And I bet you I've asked thousands of people, why are you doing this? I'll get some of the the insecure answers. Well, I needed the new. No, you didn't need the new truck.
Right.
I myself, I don't go out and buy new vehicles. I
Yes.
wait till somebody trades the one in after a year or so
Right.
because they didn't
And you
like
need
it
a roof that doesn't leak, and
because
you need,
they
yeah,
got
you,
they
right,
let it depreciate. They lost the
right.
5,000. I didn't.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, there's things people do need. They need new faucets, they need new roofs, they
correct.
need a
Those are
safe
things you
car.
need. And
Right.
then, of course, the old exercise: make the list of all the things you need and the things that are just desires. And it's interesting how many things they put on the need side that have nothing to do with need
Right.
at all. So those are
So ask yourself why. If people ask themselves why they need something or why they think they need it, it might be a desire that they could postpone even or save up
exactly,
for. And then
exactly.
their anxiety would go away if they, instead of stopping and getting the $5 cup of coffee every day, they could save that up. And in 1 year, 5 times 365.
A lot of money. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what we're really talking about is there's anxiety. It can be organic. It can be the genetically, kind of thing we deal with. But what we're really dealing with here is we bring anxiety provokers into our lives, people, places, and things all the time.
Yes. Or they're
We
forced on us. They are
or
sometimes.
they're forced on us. We need to look at that. If it's us doing it, we need to start clearing the deck and start getting a little bit more realistic. If it's other people, we have to learn how to do two things, which is to set and defend the boundaries. Setting's easy. The defending parts were
Making a decision. You
difficult.
said that way earlier in this conversation. First, you make a decision. So could you talk about, so step one, make a decision. That's harder than people think. I mean, that decision has to be well thought out. You don't just go build a house, you have a plan.
You
So
have a
first is
life
make a
plan.
decision. Then what do people do to relieve anxiety? If you could kind of walk us through that.
Everything you
Other
do,
than getting your book, which we'll talk about,
yeah, right.
which makes,
Everything we do, I say this, and you hit right on where I like things to be. It doesn't matter what I've seen in the country, whether it was the Black Lives Matter, whether it was the pandemic, I always say, what is your plan? How are we going to do this?
Mhm.
I did a podcast with a person of color who said, why do you think racism is still here? I said, we had never had a viable plan to relieve ourselves of this. We don't come on board. We don't devise the plan. We don't accept it. We don't execute it together. Then it just takes on a life of its own. We hope that somewhere along the line, someone's going to come up with something. Every life has to have a plan. You can get spontaneous and do some things within the boundaries of your plan, but what is your plan? Have a plan. Then you're going to break that plan down into increments, into personal life and work life and all
Yes,
of
and
that.
family history. History repeats
Family,
itself in the
right.
macrocosm, like you just discussed that. History repeats itself because we don't pay attention to it. We don't have a plan from it.
Well,
And it happens in our families too. We will have a grandparent that will do the same thing as we're doing, and we don't even know that grandparent. It's in the DNA sometimes.
it's in the DNA and it's autopilot.
Mhm.
It's the parent who says, you should stop smoking. This is ridiculous. Well,
And they're
I
smoking.
saw this. That's what I saw. I didn't hear what you said. So,
Right.
we want to be able to have a plan. We want to look at how we're going to execute that plan and who's going to be involved. If we're talking about anxiety, and my plan is to get out of the house. Well, do I need a counselor? Do I need to see my doctor? Is medication, at least in the beginning part of the picture?
Maybe.
How do I need to change my diet? Do I need to learn how to do some things differently? I need a network. Now I'm going to I'm gonna formulate my plan. Then I'm gonna set a date where I start my plan, and I am going to be on it that day.
Yay.
Because if I say it and don't do it, I'll set the course for 5 or 6 more of those times.
So make
That
a
way,
decision, make a plan, and make a date.
make an execution date, have your network there to support you, and nothing is going to change it. The very fact
And a network. So make a
Yeah.
decision, make a plan, make a date, have a network.
And if you do that,
And that you have to slow down to do that.
you have to slow down. You got to think, and you're going to get uncomfortable. This is the other thing I tell people: please understand, you're going to get uncomfortable to move forward, but you're uncomfortable every day. So why not get uncomfortable with forward movement rather than comfort zone? That's really a comfort prison. Why don't we move you forward? The very fact that you did that, even if you don't do well on that first time you try, the fact that you did it will teach you things about yourself you never knew were there.
Yes.
And it's like chopping the weeds down.
Yes.
Now I don't have to chop back there. I can go from here. Okay, I did that. I did that. Maybe I didn't do that so well. Guys, my network, we need to move me forward a little bit here. Then you do it again. But the very fact that you said, I am going to do this, here's my plan, and I tried. That is something you haven't done yet. That's incremental forward movement.
Yes. And even if you fail, you learn something from it. So it's still forward movement.
Right. The very fact that you move forward tells you something.
Oh, every successful business person will tell you they had to fail to learn to move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you have a fear of failure, you won't move forward.
Right. And if you fail with a plan, then you can look at the plan and say, okay, we had these features and they worked.
Yes.
These few here didn't work and we kind of tripped on those. So we're going to, regain our footing. We're going to phase those out, replace them, maybe reinforce these, and let's go do it again.
It's like a GPS, recalculate.
Exactly. If you have the plan, if you have the plan, you won't look at it as a failure, because your mind will know these things were good. These things didn't work. So the plan wasn't a failure. I just didn't know enough about these. It's not about it being a failure. I just didn't know that the first time I tried it. Why would I know? So
exactly. So make a plan and make a decision, make a plan, have a network. And, these decisions are very, very important, and slow down. So before we go today, can you address one last thing? Because people will mistake excitement for fear. Again, it's that parasympathetic nervous system. So how can you put in your words that what feels like fear, can you reframe it as excitement?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a little part of in the book that I was talking about that. Anxiety doesn't always have to be negative. Anxiety is that little thing. It's life's little coffee cup, I call it. When we need to move forward, it's that little push that makes us go. It's energy. It's when our emotions get into it that it misinterprets it and it goes, oh my God.
Change.
Yeah. So anxiety and anything we do, if you and I say, hey, we're going to do a TED Talk, we walk out, we're both going to be a little, okay, you ready? Let's do it. That's the energy. That's the anxiety.
It's adrenaline. Yeah.
That's exactly. And that's what you get. And sometimes, and we don't know the difference between anxiety and adrenaline, unless, we said, cannot wait till I jump out of the plane and I love this. Oh, my heart's beating and there I go down. But these little things, the graduation party or it's 50 years and we're all getting together for our class reunion. Oh my God, I put on 40 pounds. It's all that crap that we do.
Embrace it.
Embrace it. If the anxiety's coming, be able to think through it and know, why is it here? Okay. Are things going to happen that are going to really, can be dangerous, or am I just thinking through it? If that's the case, it's just a little push. Go with it.
So let your anxiety be a propeller. let it be your forward motion, like your fuel. So where can people find you and your book, and tell us a little bit about all that? I want to all about you.
Sure. If you want to know about me, the best place to go is my website, my name, www.faustruggiero.com. Everything about me is there. The books are there. I do a little different than a lot of other people. You're going to find I think apart from 3 chapters there, chapter outlines, everything about the book. So you can actually look at it and say, does this sound like it's a fit for me? Is this something I think I
It's
want to
great.
buy? And so
It's a
that's all
practical
there.
guide. It is not abstract. It's concrete,
Yeah,
practical
it
advice.
is.
Yeah.
And the website really set up like I counsel and like I live and like I wrote the books. Let's put it all out there. Let's be factual. Here it is, one step after the other. Do you like it? That's where they'll find me. For folks
And
that
could
have
you
any
spell
questions.
your name? And I will put it on the links
Yep.
for YouTube and
Yep.
for my mental health discovery and recovery podcast. But could you spell your name so people they might be listening to this in the car. So
Not a problem. F as in Frank, AUSTRUGGIERO.com.
thank you.
And there is also a contact link there, and I do return answers to questions. So if someone has a question, needs to get in touch with me, do contact me. I'll be glad to get back to you.
Well, thank you. I have so enjoyed this conversation. It's nice to speak with someone of like mind, and I can be myself around you. Gee, I should have told you about the Eiffel Tower. Well, yeah. Well, I'm telling you, people do not understand what it's like to have a psychiatrist for a dad, and someday I might write a book about that, but I don't want to get sued. So, anyway, it's good to have humor too. That also relieves anxiety. So
It
hopefully this
does.
enlightened and lifted up people and told them the anxiety might be there, but there's practical things. I mean, like absolute guidelines and blueprints to combat it so you can have some freedom, and freedom is highly underrated these days. Yes. So thank you so much, Faust, for joining us today. Any closing thoughts about how to get rid of anxiety? Talk to that person out there that still is like, I don't know, nothing's going to get rid of mine.
Keep this in mind. There is none of the things we're talking about are not beatable. They're all treatable things. The key is you probably have tried 100 different things. None of them work. So you're apprehensive about moving forward, who's selling what, that kind of thing. It is beatable. Pick up a book, listen to what we're telling you. If the steps are provided, if they're not just a lot of information, like people like to tell you how wonderful their new acronym is and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
If there are action steps associated with it, say, hey, this is what you need to do. If when you're done reading it, you can come back as a reference book, you can call the people up and talk to them, then do it. Because if you don't, where you are now is where you'll be. And it's, I'll close with a quote that I have on the book. Anxiety is not who you are. It is what you have.
So
and it's
true.
beatable.
So
Please
true.
don't think you're stuck in this and that it can never change, because I've been treating anxiety for 4 decades and I have yet to find one person that I haven't been able to help.
Yes.
So it's there. Well, it just means you get into the program, you stick with it, you work with it, and in a very short period of time, you'll learn how to enjoy working on you, coming home to yourself every day and saying, you know what, did some good things. I'm
It'll
going to
be
do more
fun.
tomorrow.
It can be fun.
Absolutely.
And this was such a fun, informative conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope it helped a lot of people out there.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.